A dramatic court battle is unfolding after BrownMogotsi was denied bail over concerns about his address, with a magistrate ruling that he could be a flight risk. Now, his lawyer is fighting back, insisting the decision was unfair and vowing to take the matter on appeal. Stay tuned as we dive into the main story.
Obviously not satisfied with the decision of the magistrate, and he does not take this particular decision very well, and he has actually directed that we should actually start the process of appealing this particular bail application, bail decision.
But why were you unable to provide an accurate address? Because it was on that basis that bail was denied.
Look, one would say it's a clerical error. You know, the lease agreement, the one thing which is common there is that there's 3 4s and 1 5. So when the address was provided as 4454, right? And then when they went to the address, the wife of Mr. Mogotsi clarified to say the address is actually 4544. So there's one thing which is common, 3 4s and 1 5. It's something which an honest mistake, one can say, and not necessarily that Mr. Mogotsi was being dishonest. And one, if you can look at the pin location, the investigating officer used the pin location, he arrived at that particular address. So there is an address which exists with those particular numbers.
A court decision involving BrownMogotsi is attracting significant attention after a magistrate denied his application for bail, setting the stage for what could become a closely watched legal battle in the weeks ahead. At the center of the dispute is a question that appears straightforward on the surface but has become critical to the case. Where exactly does the accused live, and can the court be satisfied that he will return to face trial if released? Mogotsi appeared before the court facing several serious charges. These include perjury, defeating the ends of justice, unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition, and discharging a firearm in a built-up area. The allegations stem from an incident that allegedly took place in Vosloorus in November last year. Prosecutors allege that Mogotsi staged an assassination attempt against himself, an allegation that has drawn public attention because of its unusual nature and the legal consequences that could follow if proven in court. At this stage, it is important to remember that the case has not yet gone to trial. The allegations remain allegations, and the court process is still unfolding. The recent hearing was not about determining guilt or innocence. Instead, the focus was on whether Mogotsi should be released on bail while awaiting further court proceedings. That distinction matters because bail hearings serve a very different purpose from criminal trials. A bail court is not tasked with deciding whether an accused person committed the offenses listed in a charge sheet. Rather, it must decide whether releasing that person would create risks that outweigh the benefits of allowing them to remain free while the legal process continues. In this case, the court's concern centered largely on one issue: the reliability of the address presented by the accused. Magistrate Annelies Tlapi concluded that Mogotsi had failed to provide a verifiable fixed address. The court found that this created uncertainty about whether he would be available for future proceedings if granted bail. That finding became one of the decisive factors in the ruling. The court ultimately determined that Mogotsi represented a potential flight risk. As a result, bail was denied and he remained in custody. What makes this development particularly significant is that the disagreement between the defense and the court does not appear to focus primarily on the charges themselves. Instead, much of the dispute revolves around the interpretation of information presented during the bail proceedings. The defense argues that the address issue should not have been enough to justify continued detention. Speaking after the ruling, Mogotsi's lawyer, William Sekgatja, strongly criticized the decision. He argued that the court placed too much emphasis on concerns regarding the address and insufficient weight on other factors. According to Sekgatja, the sole reason for the denial of bail was the conclusion that Mogotsi represented a flight risk due to questions surrounding where he resides. The defense position is that this conclusion was not justified. Sekgatja stated that the address provided to the court was not something that suddenly appeared during the bail application. Instead, he explained that it had previously been supplied to investigators and had also been included in an affidavit submitted by Mogotsi's wife. From the defense perspective, this demonstrates consistency rather than deception. The lawyer further argued that the accused had been transparent with investigators and that there was no intention to mislead authorities regarding his place of residence. This disagreement highlights an important aspect of the justice system that often receives less public attention than dramatic courtroom arguments or major criminal allegations. Administrative details matter. Information such as addresses, employment records, travel history, family ties, and community connections can play a major role in bail proceedings. While such details may appear minor compared with criminal charges, courts frequently rely on them when assessing whether an accused person is likely to return for future hearings. In many cases, the strength or weakness of this information can significantly influence the outcome of a bail application. This situation therefore raises broader questions about how courts evaluate reliability and credibility during pretrial proceedings. How much weight should be placed on discrepancies in personal information? At what point does an inconsistency become serious enough to create concern? And how should courts balance concerns about procedural accuracy against the principle that accused individuals remain innocent until proven guilty? These questions do not apply only to this particular case. They form part of broader discussions that arise regularly within legal systems around the world. Another notable aspect of the defense argument involves what was described as numerical discrepancies in the address. The defense maintains that any inconsistencies were relatively minor and should not have been treated as evidence that Mogotsi intended to evade justice. This argument will likely become an important issue if the matter proceeds to appeal. Appeal courts often examine whether lower courts properly exercise their discretion and whether the conclusions reached were supported by the available evidence. For Mogotsi's legal team, the appeal represents an opportunity to persuade another court that the address concerns were insufficient to justify denying bail. For prosecutors, the challenge will be defending the reasoning that led to the original ruling. What makes this stage of the process important is that bail decisions can have a significant impact on both the accused and the broader legal proceedings. Remaining in custody while awaiting trial can affect a person's ability to consult with legal representatives, manage personal affairs, and prepare a defense. At the same time, courts must balance those considerations against the need to ensure that accused persons appear for future proceedings and that the integrity of the justice process is protected. The tension between these competing interests lies at the heart of many bail disputes. This case also demonstrates how legal battles often extend beyond the headline allegations. Public attention frequently focuses on the charges themselves. However, much of the legal contest takes place around procedural questions, evidentiary issues, and judicial assessments of risk. These elements may not generate dramatic headlines, but they often shape the direction of a case long before a trial begins. For observers, one of the most closely watched developments will be the planned appeal. The defense has expressed confidence that another court may reach a different conclusion regarding the address issue. Whether that confidence proves justified remains to be seen. Appeals are not automatic reversals. Higher courts examine the legal reasoning behind previous decisions and determine whether errors were made. In some instances, they uphold the original ruling. In others, they substitute their own conclusions. Until that process unfolds, the denial of bail remains in place. The case is also approaching another important milestone. Mogotsi is expected back in court on the 12th of June, 2026. During that appearance, the state is expected to provide disclosure relating to the contents of the docket. This step could prove significant because disclosure often provides greater insight into the evidence that prosecutors intend to rely upon. It may also help clarify some of the issues that remain contested at this stage. In addition, the court may move closer to setting a trial date. That would mark the transition from preliminary proceedings toward the phase in which the allegations themselves begin receiving detailed judicial scrutiny. For now, however, the focus remains on the immediate consequences of the bail ruling. Mogotsi remains in custody while preparations for the appeal continue. The outcome of that appeal could influence not only his personal circumstances but also public perceptions regarding the fairness and consistency of the legal process. What makes this story noteworthy is not simply the denial of bail. It is the way in which a relatively technical issue has become central to a major legal dispute. The case serves as a reminder that in the justice system, seemingly small details can carry substantial weight. An address is not merely a line on a document. In the context of a bail application, it can become a measure of accountability, stability, and confidence that an accused person will return to court. As the legal process continues, attention is likely to remain focused on how the courts interpret those considerations and whether the defense succeeds in convincing a higher court that the original ruling should be reconsidered. Until then, the case remains a developing legal story that illustrates the complex balance between individual rights, judicial caution, and the practical realities of administering justice. And as both sides prepare for the next stage of proceedings, one question remains at the center of the debate. Was the concern about the address sufficient to justify denying bail, or will an appeal court ultimately see the matter differently?